James Gunn's Superman has been in theaters a little over a month now, and we have seen a lot of discussion. And look, it is perfectly normal when comic book movies about characters that have been around for decades and decades, when these movies come out, people argue. People have strong opinions on these characters. They argue about the decisions that are made in the film and this and that, and we certainly had a lot of those arguments about Superman. But one of the craziest things we've seen going on is the constant, incessant, in some cases, just absolute shilling from like DC influencers, Warner Brothers influencers, the people that got flown out to go to these, to the previews and to the red carpet premieres, all this stuff. The incessant, you must believe that this is a success. All these people have been screaming since the opening weekend, it's a massive success. This thing might hit $1 billion. It's going to fly by Man of Steel. None of those things happened, yet all along the way, they still said, well, even though it's not doing that, it's still a massive success. Well, you mean this movie that had a massive budget, a massive marketing budget that is probably going to stall out a little over $600 million? Well, it doesn't matter. It broke even, I promise. James Gunn said this. James Gunn has said a lot of things in the past. James Gunn talks out of both sides of his mouth. He's lied about the things that are actually in his movies, and they come out and like, oh, he was actually lying about that. He lies about budgets. He lies about the quality of films. Remember when he said The Flash was the best superhero movie he'd ever seen in his life? Remember when he lied to Gal Gadot and said, oh, don't worry, Wonder Woman 3 is in good hands with me and Peter Safran. We'll be making it. Don't you worry, Gal Gadot. That didn't last very long. James Gunn lies. So when he comes out and gets very sensitive about people talking about how this movie is not close to breaking even at the box office, just because James Gunn says something and it makes him and his movie look favorable, doesn't necessarily mean it's true. But nevertheless, he got very heated when people were talking about a $700 million, $650 million break even at the box office point. He said, that's absolutely ridiculous. And so many Warner Brothers shills said, yeah, this movie's incredible. It's going to have a really long theatrical run. Don't you worry. James Gunn promised us on Threads that it would stay in theaters a long time, that it wouldn't go to digital early. Well, here we are. James Gunn's Superman is coming to digital on August 15th. Now, when the story came out originally that it was going to be August 26th, 45 days after it got released in theaters, some people were like, well, that's a little bit too soon. I don't know if I believe that. You started seeing coping from all the people that have been shilling so hard for this movie. Then they moved up to the 15th. We're talking about 35 days, bros. 35 days after this movie comes out in theaters, it is going to digital, which, you know, we have seen movies, and we're getting more and more into this era where people release digital early and, you know, box office runs don't last as long and blah, blah, blah. This is a movie, undeniably, that had much better legs than a lot of other superhero movies that have come out over the past couple years. No question about that. No doubt about that. I've talked about it on multiple videos in multiple streams. However, that is absolutely slowing down. The international numbers have been abysmal for this movie. Really solid domestic holds, but all of that is really slowing down, and it looks like Warner Brothers is pulling the trigger. They're putting this thing on video on demand 35 days after it was released in theaters. I think Blu-rays are available in mid-September. I believe they announced that as well. So another month from now, you're going to be able to buy it on Blu-ray. Probably won't be very long after that it goes to streaming, just straight up on streaming. And this is all after James Gunn said, don't worry, it's going to be in the theater for a long, long time. This is the same James Gunn who, when the budgets came out, when you had documents from Warner Brothers that said, hey, we have an estimated budget of $363 million. James Gunn said, I don't know where that came from. That's wild. That's crazy. But the reality is, when you do look at this movie, and yes, I know a lot of people love it, but there's also been a very strange conversation from people about it, including people who, if this is a Disney Marvel movie and it was giving these returns and they're trying to argue, well, with this and that, it might not make profit here, but it might break even with this and this and this. 100% they wouldn't like accept those things if they were criticizing those. But look, I just gotta be honest. For movies I like, I gotta be honest. For movies I don't like, I gotta be honest. I really like Mission Impossible. I also said, you know what? I don't care how much it makes on video on demand. I don't care how much a person pays for it to make streaming here. They spent way too much fucking money on that movie. And even if you take Warner Brothers at their word, despite the fact that they lied to us about the Flash budget, and despite the fact that we have documents saying that $363 million was the estimated budget for Superman, if you take them at their word, and say they spent $225 million on this movie and $125 million on marketing, despite reports that number was also a lot higher. Let's just take them at their word and say that they spent $350 million on this thing. Right now, between domestic and international, they have made back for the studio somewhere in the realm of $280, $290 million. That's where we're at. That is not close to breaking even. And now that it's going to digital, I honestly do think that 620, 630 is probably going to be where that ends up. And despite the headlines about domestic box office crushes Man of Steel, crushes like all this stuff, even without adjusting for inflation, this movie's not going to hit the same numbers that Man of Steel did fucking 12 years ago. Not even going to come close to something like BVS, but it's not even going to hit Man of Steel. And this is without factoring in inflation, ticket prices, all this stuff. The truth is, when you break it down by number of tickets sold, the number of people who actually go into these movies, it is less than half of the amount of people that went to see these movies 12 years ago. That's where we're at with Superman, with James Gunn's Superman. And another thing, you can talk about the video on demand all you want. This is why I think they're doing it like this. I think they know the box office run's pretty much done, that it's really slowed down. They also know that they didn't break even theatrically. But what else do you have? You do have video on demand. You do have selling it to yourself for the right to stream it to make the balance look better. You do have those things. What we don't have access to are the numbers that they make off video on demand. We don't know. We don't fucking know. But what I do know is what they'll tell us. They'll say, look, it was a massive, huge fucking hit on video on demand. And they'll throw out some random number to show that, whatever. That's what they'll tell you. And then they'll say, this made it hugely profitable for us, despite it maybe not making its money back with just its theatrical run. We'll have no way to verify that. We'll have no way of knowing that. But that's probably the next spin that's going to be out there for Superman. And you can love the movie, you can hate the movie, whatever. I didn't hate it. I gave it like a 4.5 out of 10. And I thought there were a lot of problems with the movie overall, but I certainly didn't hate the movie. But if you love it or hate it, you can't sit here and pretend that going to digital after 35 days, all the while arguing with people and getting very sensitive when people tell you, you know, this probably has to hit somewhere in the range of 650 to 700 to have any thoughts of breaking even on the budget that you told us, regardless of the fact that you probably spent way, way more on it than you're telling us you did. You can tell that there's a lot of sensitivity there from James Gunn. This is someone who has lied a lot about virtually everything when it comes to this movie. But a lot of people are defending him and saying, no, you're wrong. It's a huge hit. It's already making so much money for them. That's why they sent it to digital after only 35 days. That's why, we promise. The conversations have been nuts. And the amount of people that are just shilling hard for this movie is also fucking crazy. Just being real. But there it is, James Gunn's Superman. Despite him saying it would have a long theatrical run and wouldn't be coming to digital anytime soon, here it is on digital. Can't believe that James Gunn said something and it turned out to not be true.